right. Good morning again. Hi, I'm David Williams, the head of diversity inclusion for USTA Eastern. And I'm very excited to introduce our Fireside chat session with Michael Dowse, Chief Executive Officer for the United States Tennis Association, and Marisa Grimes, our newly appointed Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the USTA, who will talk to us this morning about their journey, their personal journey, and USTA's journey and vision for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's great to see both of you in your first public appearance together, so thank you for joining us today.
Well, David, thank you so much for having us, and Jenny, as your ED, thanks for putting this conference together. Always wish I could join the sectional conferences in person, but we all know that's a challenge this year, and very excited to be chatting with Marisa with the group today. And I think, David, as you said, I wanted to share a little bit about my journey and the USTA's journey to where we're at today as it relates to diversity and inclusion, and then we'll jump into some Q&A. So I think context is important, and as we all know, it's been an incredible year in so many different facets, and specific to diversity and inclusion. I think, you know, as the leader of the organization, we made some mistakes early on, and it all started back when the pandemic hit, and when I came in. If you recall, the USTA went through a very significant reorganization. We reduced our workforce by nearly 25%. And that was really driven by two factors at the time. And one of them was the financial constraints of having a no-fan US Open in the pandemic. But also, frankly, I was brought in to restructure the organization. And a big part of that was to make us nimbler and faster and better align our structure against our 5 strategic choices. And specific to diversity and inclusion, the thought at the time was, let's not have a CDIO. That position had been open for a few years. We thought maybe it was, frankly, more window dressing than true leadership. And we wanted to put diversity and inclusion into community tennis. And then when the really unfortunate tragedy of George Floyd hit in May, it was right when we were going through our restructure, the Gang of 51, I think most of you know that, it's our section delegates, presidents, and EDs, really spoke up about the importance of having a CDIO. And I spent a lot of time with Derek White discussing it, one of our delegates from Southern, and he was 100% right. And what really hit me at that point, it wasn't, should we do it centralized at national level or should we decentralize it? To me, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Why either or? It should be both. It should be fully embedded in the organization. So at that point, we really rethought our approach to it. And that's became even that more important to have a chief diversity and inclusion officer. So we put a search committee together that included several board members and myself, and we went through that journey. And we're so fortunate through it, we've been able to hire Marisa Grimes. She had some commitments to her prior employer, so she couldn't start with us till January 1st. But I'm extremely excited to have her on the team, and that's why we're here today. But also I want to stress, it's not just about having a CDIO. It's going to be fully embedded in the organization at all levels. And we'll talk a little bit about that through the Q&A today. And I also love the Be Open video you showed at the beginning, because that was one of our first outputs of our dedication, diversity, and inclusion. And we have one of the largest stages in the world with US Open. We have to continue to use that as a megaphone to talk about what is right for a society. So we'll continue to do that as we go into 2021. So with that, David, I'll maybe hand it back to you, or if you like, I've got some questions from Marisa that I could ask her for the rest of the group so we can get to know her a little bit.
Absolutely. I'll let you ask those questions of Marisa now.
All right, Marisa, as you're coming into the organization, welcome. And I thought it'd be helpful if you could share to the group a little bit about your background and what makes you tick.
Sure, of course. So, well, first, I just want to also echo Mike and say thank you to USTA Eastern, especially David and Jenny and everyone who helped put this session together. So thank you for having us, first of all. So yes, I'm super excited to be here. Just a little bit about my background. It's primarily a mix of leadership roles in diversity and inclusion and strategic communications, as well as some work in community engagement and organizational development woven in there as well. So, you know, quite a mix. Most recently, I was leading the D&I strategy for MasterCard across their North America region and their global business operations. And that really entailed everything from how MasterCard recruited and developed and retained diverse talent to how the company engaged with the markets and the communities around them to serve diverse customers and grow the business. I've also worked for a range of companies in different industries, including media, technology, financial services, data and research. And I would say in all of those roles, one common element was that it was really important to bring simplicity and alignment across the organization because, you know, complexity and working in silos, you know, it really dilutes the impact of the work. And I think that is very much true of diversity and inclusion, as well as lots of other strategic priorities that organizations are trying to drive forward. So things like applying best practices and streamlining processes and communication, bringing more consistency and clarity, and most importantly, accountability to the work were critical.
Thanks, Marisa. Really excited to have your experience and your background. I think it brings a real fresh perspective to the USTA. Next question I have for you, it sounds like maybe the interview questions we were giving you, but your first 100-day plan as you jump into the organization, any initial goals for your first 100 days?
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, certainly my first, 100 days, my focus is going to be on doing a lot of listening and learning, right? So I've been meeting with as many stakeholders as I can across the organization, within the sections, as well as partners outside of the USTA. And I really just want to absorb as much information as I can, as quickly as I can, right? So that I can get up to speed and really, start driving forward our strategic priorities. So, hearing what's top of mind for all of our stakeholders first, better understanding what their strategies are, getting their thoughts on where our greatest opportunities are to collaborate and build the D&I strategy together and drive growth is really what I'm focused on these initial few weeks and months. And then really starting to lay out what our strategic framework will be, looking at both what we want to accomplish in the short term, the medium term, and long term, and our roadmap for getting there.
And just a little bit of commentary when we interviewed dozens of candidates for this role, and one thing that really stood out to me for Marisa, so many of the candidates were very good at identifying that we had to have these tough discussions and realize that we do have some problems in our society and our organization, but it kind of stopped at that, where Marisa was very strong at then saying, all right, once we have those conversations, we have to bridge it with the specific plans and KPIs and hold ourselves accountable. So I've already seen Marisa doing that. It's not even in your first 30 days, in your first few weeks. So really appreciate that. Next question I have for you. It talks about, we've all read your bio. You gave us a little bit of a background. What's one thing we wouldn't know about you by reading your bio? And I don't know the answer to this. So I'm all ears.
Right. I don't play tennis, right? I've definitely been a casual observer and fan of the sport, but I have not played myself. I grew up in a basketball family. So I'm the youngest of 5 children, and we all played basketball. I also played a little bit of volleyball and field hockey at one point. So I consider myself to be fairly athletic, and I like a challenge. So now I feel like I have to learn to play tennis. Of course.
You got to join the armies of people that are finding our sport with this pandemic. Another side note, the PAC study, which is the Physical Activity Council, just reported 4 million new tennis players came into our sport in 2020. So truly the silver lining of the pandemic. Well, with that, David, I think I'll pass it back to you and let you moderate some questions to both myself and Marisa. And if time permits, we'll take some from the audience too, I believe is the cadence.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you, Michael. So we have some early questions for you. Michael, the first one is for you. The USTA has been without a volunteer director for some time now. Are there plans to hire someone for that position? And if so, will that person be a part of the D&I team?
Yeah, so as far as a volunteer director, it may not specifically be called that, but Jeff Waters' group is getting resourced up, which is section support and services. And that's all about supporting our staff out in the sections and districts, but also all our volunteers. It's one of our key priorities. If you look at our 5 strategic priorities, it's one that's actually specifically called out, is servicing the industry. And that again is going to be through our sections and districts. And then I talked a little bit about this in my personal journey on D&I. It really became clear that as part of our section support services, it has to have a robust diversity and inclusion team as well. But we always say structure and capabilities follow strategy. So as Marisa fine-tunes our D&I strategy, we then will resource that department with the appropriate resources specific to diversity and inclusion.
Great. Next question is for Marisa. Marisa, what are the plans to diversify our volunteer pipeline, and has outreach to our Njtl alumni been considered?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, increasing diversity, clearly among staff and volunteers is a priority, right? And I think key to any strategy is first, you have to make sure you're looking in the right places, right? So yes, I think absolutely, we should be thinking about Njtl alumni and expanding to other sources for outreach as well. So absolutely. And then the second piece is, I think we have to always make sure that, we're showing up with the right value proposition and the right message that resonates with the groups we're trying to attract. We have to understand what motivates them, what they care about, what will get them engaged and keep them engaged, right? And so all of that really needs to be part of our strategy. Are we looking in the right places, connecting with the right groups, the right people to attract more people into the sport and to diversify our volunteer pipeline? And then also, are we reaching them with the right message and value proposition?
No, I like that quite a bit, especially as we're growing the game and we're adding players. To have that volunteer base to support that growth is fantastic. The next question I have is for Michael. Is there a plan to increase the number of people of color at the leadership levels? And that would be director level and above. You talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, David, the short answer is yes. And it's also around getting more females at the director level too. So it's people of color and females. And I think that the strategy and approach is we have some great talent within the USTA currently, and we need to develop and invest in those people and give them opportunities to advance their careers. And then externally as well, we need a broader outreach to bring in more talent of diverse backgrounds. And what I talk about, and I may use this term on other questions as well, because I strongly believe in it, it's called the say-do ratio. When we say we want to do something and then we actually do something, unfortunately, sometimes can be different things. So we're talking about we want more diversity at the director level and up, but we're actually going to hold ourselves accountable to that. So within our annual incentives, that will be one of the targets for many of our leaders, is to assure that they have a certain number of diverse candidates in all pools when we go to interview candidates. So that's going to go into place in the next 30 days. And just on somewhat of a related note, that's called individual MBOs. But for the broader organization as well, we're going to have diversity goals on tennis participation, which will be what we call a front page goal. So again, at the end of the day, we say we're going to do it, but you should ask that question 12, 24 months from now, and we'll see how we're doing.
Definitely do that. Yes, execution is important. Okay, so if both of you don't mind, we'd like to hear a little bit about your guiding leadership principles. So both of you, please share your vision and how you're getting here. What's your North Star?
Well, Marisa, since I'm the boss, I'm going to let you go first, because I can learn from you.
All right. Well, I would say I do love this question because it's something that I think about a lot. So one of the things that I've discovered as I've grown in my career is that I feel that I'm at my best and able to be my most effective when I'm being my authentic self and not trying to fit into a mold of what a leader is supposed to look or act like. And so it was really important for me to come into this realization, because the fact is there just aren't a lot of leaders who look like me. And so and especially not early on in my career, right? And so, although I've certainly taken, lessons and leadership approaches from lots of different leaders that I've worked with from all different backgrounds, it didn't work for me to just try to emulate them. So being authentic so that I can be my best and most productive self, and also empowering the people that I work with to do the same has always been sort of one of my guiding leadership principles.
David, specific to me, I would say I've really had to pivot a little bit this year on the principles, and it's because of the pandemic. As a leader, we have to make a lot of decisions, and I always say, and I guess it falls into my old principles, which I always said was people first, business organization or brand second, and business third. So if you think about the USTA, our mission is to grow and promote the sport of tennis, but if we don't get the people component right, we'll never deliver our mission. And if we don't deliver our mission, then the business doesn't come as far as the financials. So to me, it's always people first, brand second, and business third. But within that people range, it has multiple components. And it actually starts with the health and well-being of all. We used to take that for granted. But with the pandemic, we've had to make a lot of decisions. And many times financially, it would have been better to do different things differently than we did this year, right? But at the end of the day, that was against our principles of health and safety first. And then the other component of it, if we say people first, that falls right into the diversity and inclusion bucket, right? Because a healthy organization is a more diverse organization. So we really want to get the people component right. We've got to protect everyone's health and safety to the best of our ability, and to make sure we have a real diverse and bright group of, and motivated employees and staff and volunteers. So that's really, to sum up my principles, again, it's people first, the brand second, which in our case, the brand is tennis. And then third, the business will come, but never put the business ahead of those first two.
I love that. I love that. Motivating your employees and your workforce to go out there and deliver on the goals and objectives that the organization sets. That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, the next one is, and again, for both of you, what would you consider to be the toughest challenges towards achieving a culture that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive?
Marisa, I'll let you go again first.
Okay. So I think, a lot of organizations often make the mistake of not including everyone in their inclusion strategies. It can sometimes feel like D&I only applies to certain groups and it's only the job of certain departments to address it. And I think the reality is, right, everyone is diverse. We're all diverse. We're all from different backgrounds. We all bring different perspectives and life experiences. And creating a diverse and equitable and inclusive culture means that everyone sees themselves reflected and everyone feels accountable for this work. It's embedded throughout everything we do. And so I think, people really just have to, we believe that DEI isn't at the expense of one group or another. It's about creating opportunities for us all to win. And that's, it's difficult to, every organization, every person is sort of on their own journey. It's difficult to move everyone to that direction and to that understanding. But it's really critical to see this work move forward.
Yeah. Thanks, Marisa. And to play off that, I'm going to use the expression I used earlier, our say-do ratio. So to me, the biggest challenge is doing what we say we're going to do. It's very easy to say how passionate we are about diversity and inclusion and bringing equity to the organization, but actually doing it is where you have to roll up your sleeves and be committed to it. I'm confident we're going to do that, but it's never easy. But it starts with accountability and measuring it. And that's what we've talked about. And also not having our DEI as a standalone silo off on the side. It has to be embedded in everything we do, that our D&I teams at every table, every discussion, and it just becomes embedded in our culture. So those are the two things we're going to really focus on going forward, is putting together clear targets and accountability and embedding DEI into our organization at all levels.
No, that's fantastic. There's been a lot of talk about diversity of thought as well, and you have to get everyone involved, everyone engaged, right, into the conversation. The next question I would have then for Marisa is, how do we engage more white men as allies in the struggle for diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar, right? Similar to making sure that everyone feels included in diversity and inclusion work. I think we have to do a better job of articulating how and why we need white men and allies from other groups engaged in this work. So these efforts really, I mean, they can't move forward without the support of white men. That's a fact. But I think a lot of people, and not just men, they are unsure of how to engage, right? They're afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. And so oftentimes will, choose to not say anything in order to not do or say the wrong thing. And so we have to tell them what we need and what we need and how they can help, right? And be as specific in providing guidance and direction to them as we can, but also create that opportunity and safe space for them to sort of go on this journey with us and to be able to learn and make some missteps along the way, because no one is perfect. No one's going to get it right 100% of the time, but it's really about being focused and intentional about everyone sort of going along on this journey together. I like to use the metaphor of a journey a lot because it really is, it's a process, right? And everyone is sort of in their own place and sort of learning and growing along the way. And we just have to, make sure that we're creating those opportunities for safe conversations for people to learn and understand and to grow.
Great answer. Okay, and then another one before we'll take some questions from the audience. And we'd like to understand how we can better appeal to athletes from the more traditional strength and endurance sports to give tennis a try. That's been some of the criticisms of tennis, that, it's not really open enough yet to get all athletes interested in the sport. So what can we do? How can we do this a little bit better?
Maybe I'll take a shot at that, Marisa. I have some initial thoughts on it. And maybe coming from a consumer goods background, I'll use the example. There's push marketing and pull marketing, right? The pull marketing is around the Be Open campaign, things we can do on the big stage that shows people from diverse backgrounds that our sport is open to all people. And this perception that it's a white elitist sport is just absolutely wrong, and we need to change that. On the push side, I would talk about our coaches network, and I did see Dan Santorum had a question in there about diverse coaches, and we believe in that 100%. I mean, we've aligned with the Tennis Industry United as diversity is one of our top goals, and it's really clear to us if our coaching base is not diverse, our outreach to diverse kids is not going to be nearly as successful. So we're working with both the certified teaching organizations, the PTR and the USPTA, to put together very specific plans and targets on how we can increase diversity amongst our coaches around the country. So I think if we get a real diverse coaching base, again, that's people of color as well as more females, I think that will help our outreach to new communities. So that's going to be a big, big focus going forward.
That's great. Okay, so that's the end of the early questions. So we have a little time left. We'd like to take some questions from our audience members. There are a couple that have come in already. The first one I have is there a plan to assist programs in mentoring their youth to become the next wave on the mission of diversity and inclusion?
Marisa, do you want to answer that, or I can answer it? I don't want to hog all the questions.
You can jump in first and I can weigh in.
Yeah, as far as mentoring and education, I think that's a key component of success. It goes back to providing tools that allow people to be successful. And that's, to me, something USTA National can do. It's hard to scale that at the individual district and section level. But if we provide that toolbox at the national level that can then be implemented at the different districts and sections, I think that'll be an opportunity we can pursue as we build out the curriculum in this area.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I've been having conversations around over the last couple of weeks is, it's part of that, right? Once we get them engaged, how do we keep them engaged? How do we continue to develop and provide those opportunities for them to grow? So absolutely is something that I think we need to build into our strategy moving forward.
Thank you, Bo. Another question had come in regarding the Black Lives Matter movement. Is there are there plans to remain committed to that movement, and if so, how would that show up? How would that look?
So I'll take a shot at that one. I'll say that hasn't been really well thought out yet. I just want to be transparent on it. I think we had a great partnership when we said with the Bring Black Lives Forward on our artwork at the US Open, and that money went back to that cause. But that to me is a discussion that needs to be had amongst our D&I team, our sections, and our districts as we move forward. I think one thing I've always made clear, and the USTA is not to get into politics by any means, but we absolutely need to be involved with social justice and against violence and all things good for our society. So if that's appropriate, we'll use the appropriate avenues to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, and for me, I really think it's about how do we focus on the things that we said we were going to do in terms of, bringing in more diverse people, bringing more diverse people into the sport as well as into our organization. How do we continue to develop, to retain, to engage, to provide opportunities and a level playing field for everyone to grow? So if we're doing those things and we're taking action and we're doing what we said we were going to do, for me, it's less about a movement or a campaign or a statement. It's really about making sure that our actions speak for themselves.
Thank you. A couple more. Has the word belonging been considered to be added to diversity and inclusion? So there's an important element within feeling included or inclusive. How does the word belonging fit in, and can we use that more?
Yeah, I'll offer a perspective on that. So I think, there are so many words, so many terms that we could add into this work, right? There's equity, there's equality, there's belonging, there's so many different words, but it's really about, for me, how people feel engaged when they walk through the doors, when they're connecting with colleagues, when they're connecting with people out in the communities. It's really about how people feel, and what we're saying we are as an organization and as a sport, does it actually match what people are feeling and the impact of it? And so it's less about, I think, using the specific words. I will use the word belonging because, yes, I think everyone wants to belong and everyone wants to feel included. But again, for me, it's about the actions we're taking and the feeling that people get and the impact of what we're doing. That matters more to me than the specific words.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think we covered pretty much. If there are any other questions that have not been covered through the answers from Michael and Marisa, please, we have just about 1 minute left.
David, we could also write some answers to some of these questions if we don't get them all and circulate them back out to you if that's helpful.
That would be very helpful. So that would be fantastic. Well, yeah, I think we're good.
Hi, David. There was a couple more in there. Maybe
okay.
We can. This is from Delay Mass. If we increase diversity, will we increase participation? What resources are being put behind to make this happen?
Elaine, good. Right. I love that question because it is all about if we grow overall participation, that participation has to reflect our broader country as well. So working with Craig Morris right now and the community tennis team, you'll be seeing something in the coming weeks because we have this very unique opportunity right now with the pandemic. As I said earlier, the PAC study showed there's 4 million people that have entered our sport. That's the first part of Attract. We now need to engage and retain them so they stay with us a long time. So we're looking at putting programs and incentives in place that will incentivize the industry to do that. And part of that will be around diversity and inclusion as well of these new players.
Okay. And one more from one of our regional council directors. NFL has an excellent incentive strategy to populate executive and head coaching positions across the league. Does the USTA have an incentive strategy to promote diversity? And what would diversity success look like across the country in each section?
So I saw that question there and I'm glad it was asked. I would say at the national level, yes, we're getting there. And I kind of touched on that earlier with our incentive scheme now is going to be based on diversity inclusion targets. So I feel really confident we're heading in the right direction there. I think at the section and district level, each section and district has their own governance and roles, but we can definitely set the example and really try to provide a toolbox that will help the sections and districts achieve the same thing. And then there was what does success look like? I knew there was a second part of the question. To me, at the highest level, our sport, we need to lose that reputation of a white elitist sport, but ultimately our sport needs to reflect our overall country's population. To me, that would be success.
Okay.
I have another question. Somebody wrote, excellent definition of D&I with respect to women and people of color, as well as diversity of thought. Will there be a priority given to people with special needs?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, it has to reflect our overall country, right? The demographics and the backgrounds of everyone in our country. So absolutely, yes.
So what we'll do at this point, because it's 9:32, I'd like to make sure that we capture all the questions here in the chat. And as you mentioned, Michael, we appreciate you and Marisa taking these questions on, and we can provide the responses back out to all the registrants and participants of the session itself. I just have one last question for you both. Will you come back next year and talk about this year in retrospect?
Yeah, I'm up for that. Yeah.
That's one yes, Michael?
I never want to break a promise. I can't say 100% yes, because I might be at this tournament down in Australia at this time. But if I'm here, I'm able to get there, I will be there.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you both. We really appreciate you being part of the USTA Eastern family today. We're just going to promote one quick thing, or a couple things actually. Our award ceremony, please make sure everyone tunes in Friday, January 29th at 6:15 p.m. on USTA Eastern's face page. And also tomorrow morning at this time, 9 a.m., we will have our grants discussion where we talk about the D&I grants and other grants available to USTA Eastern applicants. So thank you both, Michael and Marisa, for your time, and everyone enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you guys, really appreciate it, David, for hosting us, really appreciate it, thank you.
Thanks everybody, have a good day.
Take care.